Well, hello, everyone. My name is Troy Bacon. I'm the host for today. I'm one of the SUFON coordinators or organizers, and I've been doing some Zoom events lately. Carol, her name is Carol Lynn on this Zoom call. She's also one of the organizers. Mary Kennedy is our brilliant graphic design artist. She's designed a bunch of our merchandise that's on the Etsy store that should be posted on the chat soon, if any of you want to check that out. I'm getting the YouTube channel, the SUFON Seattle UFO Network YouTube channel up and going again, and that's where this recording will be going later. We also have Maureen Morgan joining us of Washington MUFON, and a bunch of all the participants here are from Washington MUFON. Some are from the SUFON community. So Maureen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself quickly?
If I can say a word or two. First of all, Washington MUFON is absolutely thrilled to work with SUFON. You know, we're separated by the Puget Sound, which is, you know, just tiny little strip of water. So we're going to be doing a lot more projects in the future together. But I wanted to thank all of the people who are with Washington MUFON, with the MUFON's Experiencer Research Team. We've got a sprinkling of very, very interesting people here. But I wanted to make sure everybody is aware that the McMinnville UFO Fest is on this year, May 13th and the 14th. In McMinnville, Oregon, and the keynote speakers are Whitley Strieber and Kathleen Martin. And Washington MUFON will have an information desk there, and we're going to make sure there's an announcement made that, you know, anybody who's an experiencer can come over to our table, and we'll have at least 3 or 4 ERT people, experiencer research people there for them to talk to. So that's really exciting. This is really the first time that the McMinnville UFO Fest has is like really welcome the whole experiencer anomalous phenomenon. So this is, yeah, if you look it up online, and if you can come down, it's a terrific conference. And if you come by, be sure to stop by our information desk.
Very good, Maureen. Thank you. Just quickly, Mary Kennedy did post the Etsy link to the Meadowhawk Designs Etsy page with the SUFON merchandise. All of the proceeds go to supporting SUFON operational costs. We don't make a profit off of that. In a minute, we're going to open the floor to Suzy Hansen. She's, of course, the author of the book, The Dual Soul Connection. She's been a lifetime, almost lifelong experiencer of alien contact and paranormal phenomena. We kind of go hand in hand. Dr. Rudy Schild contributed to editing and adding to part of that book. So without further ado, I will turn the floor over to Suzy. She will get her screen share up and going briefly, and that will be a PowerPoint presentation. She'll give a speech about the intersections of consciousness and alien technology as she has experienced it. I'll mute myself and let's get started with the presentation then.
All right, so at the beginning of the speech, I'm just putting a couple of slides here which have the websites to my UFO research, sighting research organisation in New Zealand, and also my communicator link website, which is for experiencers. And I'm putting them on here so that when folks have a look at the speech on your website, they'll be able to go to those. Okay, so that's the communicator link one. I work with Cheryl Gottschall from Australia, and we deal with experiencers in our own countries, Australia and New Zealand, but from elsewhere as well. So that's my book, The Dual Soul Connection, The Alien Agenda for Human Advancement. It's quite not surprising to me that a lot of the information that I was given during the writing of this book and throughout my years of experience, many of the things that I was told would happen in the future are beginning to happen and have been happening for about the last 6 or 8 years, and they're starting to speed up. And we'll have a little bit of more of that later. Dr. Rudy Schild, emeritus astrophysicist from the Harvard Smithsonian Center, contributed to my book. He's done a scientist's epilogue and commentary and footnotes throughout the book. So I may, if Troy invites me, be speaking eventually about the alien agenda for human advancement to your group, but I'm not going to go into that today. Today I'm going to look more at the consciousness technology. Now, I gave a full speech to Maureen's group about the technology, but this is going to actually be pieces taken out of that with some other information put in there. And we're going to actually look at how that consciousness link takes place. Okay, so my turning device is not working here. That's all right. Okay, so just briefly, my background is that I had contact from childhood. This involved being taken on board craft and learning things. As a child, I didn't recognize it as alien contact, of course. Back in those days, we were still talking about flying saucers. So really, it was just these dreamlike memories that I had that I would discuss with my mother and really nobody else. But as I got older, I began to talk about more things to my friends at school and found out that that just wasn't done. So you become a very silent person. You shut out a whole portion of your life when you have these experiences that you can't talk about to other people. Okay, so the contact involved downloads, this is an image from the speech that I do about the agenda side of things. And right from the age of 8, I can remember having these downloads from an ET who's standing in front of me, giving me quite a vast amount of information. And this went on, of course, to being a part of the what people these days are calling the hybrid situation, which I didn't write about in my book, but I'll be writing about in my second book. And the production of children that have been altered in some way, either at a soul level or physically, or in their consciousness has been enhanced. This involved, of course, taking the children or the babies of experiencers on board craft and introducing them to other species of babies that where interactions took place and observations were made by senior greys, what I call senior greys, who were able to communicate with these children on some level when even their mothers and parents could not do that yet. Okay, so today's, I'm putting a link onto my technology speech, which is on the internet, on my YouTube channel and other channels, and you'll be able to have a look at the full write-up or speech on technology if you wish, because some of it will not be in today's speech. Okay, so let's looking at today, the intersection of consciousness and extraterrestrial technology, because everything that you deal with the alien technology includes consciousness. So we have telepathy, and we have what I call mind melds, and we have all kinds of precognition and massive amounts of information being shared between people and entities. And of course, this is part of their consciousness-assisted technology as well. Okay, so the thing that we have to remember is that the role of telepathy, sentiency, and consciousness in their technology, and I put telepathy and sentiency in there in particular because telepathy plays a big part in the exchange of consciousness on a craft, as does sentiency. So by that I mean feeling things, being able to pick up on frequencies and vibes, we might call them. Okay, so today we'll look at some examples of combining technology and consciousness on board craft. It's not just like our technology where you plug it into the wall or you've got a battery that runs it or whatever. And that's how it works. And your consciousness, apart from you operating it, is not necessarily a part of that technology. But on a craft, your brain and your mind and your very auric field and your individual consciousness is very much a part of the operating of the technology. So we're going to look at activating and operating it and bridging technology, look at entering programs and procedures, medical healing technology, conveying data over distance, creating alternative realities or states of consciousness, and calibrating to the hive mind or societal standard on board craft. Starting with bridging technology, I'd just like to say that I've been saying for quite a few years now that the majority of the technology that I believe that experiencers use on board craft is what I call bridging technology. So it's technology that has been in effect dumbed down from what the ETs have and what they're capable of using. Because I think if we were exposed to the grandeur of their technology straight off, we would have a lot of difficulty operating it. And in fact, it would seem like magic to us. So even though some of this technology that I might talk about tonight, decades ago when I first saw it, seemed like magic as well, as we have progressed in our own technology on this planet, that magic is beginning to recede, and much of the technology we have now is started out looking quite magical, but is now quite commonplace. And so I think the ETs have been bridging this gap between what we had at the time and what they had at the time. And they've created technology that we can use that involves consciousness, and that technology is being replicated on the planet. However, the consciousness component of it is not there yet, because I don't think they see us as being responsible enough or mature enough to use that kind of technology without weaponizing it or using it against each other. So let's look at the first of that list, activating and operating the technology. I've explained bridging technology, but I want to just briefly touch on frequencies and spirituality, because as I got older, I began to be exposed to more technology on craft that was actually dependent on your frequency or your spirituality to be able to operate it. So this was never explained to me fully, but I assume that this is some kind of safety mechanism whereby you can't operate the technology if your intent is not pure. If your intent is impure, then it's not going to work. And this could well be a great safety mechanism for some of our technology, wouldn't it? If people with the wrong intent couldn't actually use it or operate it. So frequency and your intent, power of intent, plays a great part in some of the technology on their craft. Screens and computers, how they are operated and merging with technology. I'm going to touch on flying a scout craft. In 1993, I was part of a small group of humans who underwent a test situation. And in my book, I've written 2 chapters about this memory of being on a craft called The Test. And this was all very much tied to consciousness. We were given a task to do, but the task itself and the completion of it was not actually the important part. It was actually being able to use the technology and the methods that they had given us in order to operate the technology and reach the conclusion of the test. So if you look at the screen behind me there, you'll see there's a symbol there, and that symbol showed that the computer was operating on a point where it was in touch with all of my information. So I had put my hand on a rubber pad in front of that screen, and that icon came up. That icon represents everything that they know about me, from my frequency to my entire life, to everything from my blood type to you name it, health status, the lot, experiences, emotions, traumas, the whole gambit is encapsulated in a consciousness component of the computer. Now, the screen that we used was entirely operated by your consciousness and your mind and your thoughts. You can see that my right hand is on a pad there, a rubbery pad, and that linked your consciousness and your electric field to the computer. And once that was done, you were able to do things that you would never be able to do on the planet now, probably even if an advanced computer was sitting in front of you, because it wouldn't have this consciousness component. So you can see here, you can see a page that I've actually pulled out into a hologram form from the data on the computer. So with this computer, you were able to access what I call the alien internet, what I now know to be the alien internet. But also you were able to access other forms of data through consciousness that is in their, what I call their archive. So there was a massive amount of information that was accessible to you in order to complete this test. When Dr. Schuld read these chapters of my manuscript, he stated that he suspected the technology used and witnessed was 3D, which would involve a deeper quantum development of computing much closer to consciousness itself. And this would be a giant leap for our civilization because we have not yet achieved this. I'm just going to go back through there. No, I thought I was missing some slides, but I'm not. Okay, so the one example that I particularly want to look at today is something that happened in 1987 where I was actually taught to fly a scout craft. That's me in the pink nightie there with a little grey, and we were taken into a very large hangar area of a massive craft. And we were taken on, I was taken on board a craft with those human-looking ETs there. Now, some people have surmised they might be from our future, or they might be this or that, or from a particular planet. I actually don't know where they were from, and they didn't tell me, but I had met some of them on a number of occasions. They looked very Nordic, what are classically known as the Nordic ETs, human-like. They're very tall and very slim, very, very composed and highly intelligent. And I was told that I was going to be taken on board the craft and given the opportunity to learn to fly a scout craft. They said that they do this from time to time. They take humans on board and take them for this whirl. And I know a number of other experiencers worldwide who have had the same sort of experience. And I know that Grant Cameron has interviewed me and several other people about this. So once inside the craft, and we took off, which was hardly even noticeable because it's so silent and so still. It doesn't matter what the craft does or whether it turns itself upside down. You will not fall and crash your head on the ceiling. You will stay in the same status. And that is something that, of course, we have not achieved in our flight and probably won't for quite some time. So I was invited to learn how to fly the craft using two separate methods. One was using the manual method, and you can see my right hand there is holding on to a single stick that came out of the console, and I was able to fly the craft using that. And I was also given the opportunity to fly the craft just using my mind by placing my hand on the console, which connected me, as that computer I just showed you did, to the craft's big brain, or the craft's organic awareness, whatever you like to call it. I actually thought that flying the craft manually would be the easiest for me. Having flown a glider, I thought this would be okay, and I'd be pretty good at that. In actual fact, I failed terribly at that. And it was much easier to fly using consciousness, because as this guy on the right said, it involves using your not having to use brain signals to the muscles in your arm to do this or that, or to move the stick in various ways. It was simply you thinking with intent as to what you wanted the craft to do, and the craft would do it. That is probably the best way that I can describe the consciousness involved in this. People have said to me, well, what did you do? Did you say, craft, move forward 15 feet? No, it was just you became a part of this consciousness of the computer system. And I really can't put this into words, and I haven't met an experiencer yet who's flown a craft who can succinctly put it into words. It's as if your entire being, this whole consciousness part of you, your mind, your spirit, your soul, everything about you becomes connected to a greater awareness, is the way I can describe the computer that operates the craft. And this greater awareness is aware of the finest detail in your thinking, in your movement, in your power of intent. And so you have to be very careful about what you're thinking and how you're thinking it, because the craft might respond to that. So this explained to me why at times when I'd been being transported on small craft with an ET flying it, they would often just be sitting very still, staring at the screen. And I wondered when they were going to do something. And often I wondered whether we'd even taken off yet, because everything is so still and there's really no recognition that something is happening unless they've got their exterior screens on, so that you can see what's happening outside and that you're actually airborne and flying somewhere. When you connect to the big, what I call a big brain, you initially feel rather like an electric tingle that goes through your hand and through your whole body. So is there an electric component to it? I don't know. Is that just the nerves in your body reacting to this connection? I don't know. Maybe we will all find out one day when we achieve this technology ourselves. Now, the way I was told that the way they were going to take me home, because they'd actually taken me to the Northern Hemisphere, was through the planet. This was very frightening to me because I didn't know exactly what this meant. But the tall entity, the tall being, explained that there would be a change in the status of the craft and everything in it, and this would take place. There would be a shift, a temporary phase of movement from one place to another, and in that altered reality, in effect, we would pass through the planet from point A to point B. So while I'm inside the craft and have been connected to the consciousness of the craft is now connecting everything and everyone in the craft to a consciousness. It is then altering that state of consciousness, which he referred to as a shift. So it's taking it somewhere else to another status. It's passing through the space that is held by the planet, not through the soil and the magma of the planet itself, but through its space that it holds in the universe, and it would come out the other side, and then we would shift back to that original phase. Now, to do this, we took off out into space, and not right out into space, but into the exterior regions of our planet's ethers. And then we came in towards the planet. And as we came in, I noticed that on the screen that they had on, things began spiraling. There was a spiraling motion, so that the planet actually disappeared into this spiraling motion. And Dr. Schild has said that we plunged through the darkness and the screen became rather static life for a while. And Dr. Schild said that my description of flying through the Earth's interior produced images of dark tunnel-like conal vortices on the screen, and this suggests a process dominated by the spiraling waves related to consciousness. And he goes into some detail in this in the book for those who might want to follow it up or look at the other speech I've done on technology. So now let's look at how you enter programs and procedures. I've already described a little bit about the alien internet, and I'm going to look at how you depth read scripts or icons on a screen in a craft. This is very annoying that I'm having to use my mouse to change the pictures. Okay, so this is an information tablet. You remember the test that I talked about a few minutes ago with the computer, sitting at the computer, creating a hologram screen of a page of information, etc., or a piece of information. So this screen was rather like the tablets we use today. And it's interesting that back there in the 90s, I described it as an information tablet because it looked like a tablet-like shape to me, even though we did not have them in a computer form in those days. This was able to be put into the main computer, which we would now know as a USB. So it's used like a USB, and images involved in a test that I was doing came up on screen. Now, to access things in the computer, I did not use a mouse. I did not click on icons or any of the things that we do when we're using a computer. It was simply using your consciousness. You looked at a particular symbol or box and you were able to take your mind into that, and you were able to surf through all of that information that we surf through on the net by clicking onto websites and icons and lines and links. You could do all of that with your mind. So you could very quickly just go lurching through it all and be flicking stuff with your mind out of the way that you didn't need, because involved in this that we are able to do on the craft is this speed reading kind of a speed sensing kind of technique where you learn to identify what resonates with what you're looking for. So again, we've got this frequency aspect of consciousness coming in where you're seeking a matching frequency, and you don't need to examine all of the data there. You can simply flick it to one side because it doesn't resonate. And at the same time, you might also notice that I'm an English-speaking human, and on the craft, I was able to access on the computer data that I could identify with, that I could either read or understand in some way. So here we are, we have that bridging aspect of their technology again that humans are using, and you can see the amount of work that must have gone in to studying humanity and creating these archives of information. It's absolutely phenomenal, and I don't know quite how they do it, but it is utterly phenomenal. Okay, so going on to the tablet, depth reading the alien script, which I call traversing data with the mind and consciousness. So skimming over the top of it, looking for the matching frequency that might match the frequency of the task they've given you to solve. So when you go into the alien script, what I call alien script, how it is grouped and the kind of symbol and where it is placed on the screen may be all important to what you finally get out of the information. So you're reaching into that data with your consciousness again. You are not using icons and a mouse. Now, depth reading, it's interesting because this was way back in 93 when I was doing this. And we are only just now beginning to look at touching on the frequencies of things. So in some universities in the States, and probably in Russia and other countries, they are investigating how we recognize frequencies. So they've been doing experiments with students, classes of students, where they're presented with a lot of data. And as you know, the internet now is completely overloaded with data. It's almost impossible for us to find exactly what we want. It can take a very long time. And so they have been teaching students to basically look at a piece of information and use their feelings, use that consciousness aspect to decide whether or not that's appropriate for their assignment or not. And so far, the success rate of this has actually been quite good, that we have a natural aptitude to a feeling about something. So we're tapping into that gut feeling that we all have, but we don't really use very often. And it makes us realize that eventually we may become a completely telepathic society like a lot of these ETs, very far into the future. We're already leaning towards eliminating a face-to-face contact. When you ring up, say, your power company, you get an automated voice that asks you questions, etc. And so this is leading us slowly towards using consciousness in many of our own technologies. Okay, so now let's look at some medical healing technology and taking consciousness inside biological and holographic forms for assessment purposes. Now, I wish I had some really starry kind of imagery that they have on the internet these days that people have done, but I have got some rather old drawings, but that's okay because it still conveys a message. And I'd like to just briefly describe one experience I had before I get into this. I was taught at one stage to go inside a plant. So they put a plant on a table in front of me on a craft, and they demonstrated using their consciousness to enter the craft. And after a while, I was able to do this by going into the point of the leaf, down through the leaf and the little stem into the main stem, down through that, passing where other junctions take off with other leaves and stems, going right down into the base of the plant and then into the roots, and being able to feel the consciousness of the plant, being able to feel how the consciousness altered in different parts of the plant that serve different purposes. And so this little teaching aspect became very useful as the years went by and other similar experiences arose on craft. So this is an image I've put up before in some of my speeches. That's actually me lying on an examination table on a craft. And there were two ETs there who shone this beam of something down on me. Was it light? Was it a specific form of light we don't understand and have not discovered yet? Was it an energy field? I don't know. But it allowed them to look into my body, inside my body. And at a touch of the screen or simply by using their consciousness, they could instruct it to change its perspective so that it no longer saw bones. You might see the vascular system, organs, muscular system, etc. So this was like magic when I first saw it in 1978 and again in 83 and 96. And part of this technology was that they could focus on the area of the body they wanted to look into, wherever there was an organ or a bone or something they needed to view, and they could zoom in on that, and this information would all be recorded data on their computers. But they could also take their consciousness inside. So if there was a blockage in there somewhere, they could take their consciousness inside your vascular system in that area and find that and examine that blockage, etc. So this is an extrapolation or many steps further from going inside a plant, of going inside into minute areas of the body. Okay, so I put this up on speeches as well. Other people, just to show that this isn't all my imagination, other people who are experiencers in parts of the world have seen the same kind of technology that combines consciousness and some kind of light or beam technology. Steve Boucher in Canada in 1982, who was given the pseudonym of Jack at the time when it was reported in Q Fawn's bulletin, he saw a handheld version of it. I saw a handheld version of it in 1978 in New Zealand. And USA experiencer Jeffrey Morgan Foss saw a handheld version, rather like a tablet, examining the inside of a baby as well. I think it was back in the 80s. So this is something that some experiencers report. Not all experiencers will see this kind of thing because, as you will find out if you read my book or if I'm invited back to talk about the agenda, you'll know that experiencers were slotted into different parts of an agenda to learn different things because we all have different purposes and tasks in life. So in 1978 and again in 1996, I was taught this method that I'd seen the ETs use with this technology of going inside a body. So we were first of all given a hologram that they had taken of created from people who'd been brought on the craft. Now you all know that people talk about being taken on craft and examined, put on examination tables, etc. And what they've done is they have taken some of those examinations or the physical form, and they've created a hologram. So first of all, I was taught they would float this hologram in the air in front of you, and I was taught to go into the hologram because the hologram contained everything that the physical form of the body would contain anyway. So you can see a red blob of light and an aqua blob of light, and that was where I had identified health problems within the person's physical form just by using my consciousness to scan the body, seek out frequencies, seek out disruptions in the energy field, and then take my mind inside the hologram of that form. And we were able to practice this on many occasions on board craft during those years. Just see what I've got next. Okay, I'll just continue talking about that for a minute. As time went by, they then introduced the physical body, not the hologram, because to start with, I think they probably thought that starting with a human body in front of you might have been too confronting. Whereas if they floated a hologram in front of you, there was just that little bit of distance. You didn't know the person. You couldn't talk to them. They weren't right in front of you. So there was a little distance there that enabled you to examine it in holographic form. But eventually they introduced us to the specific kind of beard that I remember was rather like the back of an armadillo that could fold and open out as the back of an armadillo is able to do with all those plates. So it was kind of a metallic plastic that could conform to whatever species or whatever shape was on it. And we did these procedures in quite large groups of people, about 20 people or more, and sometimes they would say invite someone from within the group to be the subject for the day. That was quite confronting too, knowing that there were people looking into your body, moving around in your frequency field, and maybe finding some health things about you and problems that you didn't know about. And I've written about this in one of the chapters in my book. I will also be moving forward in the book that I'm writing at present and moving forward where this then went on board craft that I considered was too much to put in the first book. It's going to be expanded on in the second book. So here we have technology where you're keyed into a frequency in the room. You're always keyed into a frequency. And, people expect you to do party tricks. So sometimes experiencers are asked to prove they can do telepathy or prove they can do this or that here down on the planet. But of course, if you are not working in that heightened frequency that they have on board the craft, where you are contained within the big brain of the craft that provides masses of aspects of consciousness to you and allows you to access them, then you can't do those things. And this is where this interface, this interaction of consciousness and technology takes place on board the craft in almost everything. Okay, so what have we been doing since that was way back in the 70s, 80s and 90s? I was working with this kind of technique and technology. In 2011, we produced the first anatomage table, which is designed to help train medical students and university students throughout the world studying medicine and physiology. And it is produced, these images are produced from cadavers that have been studied, and they are able to produce images of, say, the vascular system, the skeletal system, etc., just as they were able to do on the craft. However, these are not in real time, so we are not able yet to do that with human bodies, although that is coming, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So these anatomage tables can flick between the different aspects of the human form, just as I described before with the beam of light coming down on my body. We've also now have a machine here. This was part of a PowerPoint given to me by a medical scientist when I spoke at the Congress in the US. He came up to me afterwards and said, I know what you're talking about because we're just starting to achieve it ourselves. I work with this technology and I'm going to let you have my images to show people. So this is what we have produced. It's worth millions of dollars, but it doesn't get anywhere near like what the ETs can do. But you can see that screen in the background is showing what they've scanned from a person. It does a 3D scan of the person's body, and it can come up with the vascular system, etc. Because this piece of machinery is specifically to find bleeders after operations in the vascular system. So we are moving in that direction. However, just focus on this right-hand top picture for a minute, where I'm going into the body. When I was working with the hologram, we had the capacity to be able to slice it. So we could slice it lengthways, and we could part that hologram, and contained in it was all of the insides of the person's body. So you could enter with your consciousness. You could also cut and splice and open it up. You could cut it in half and turn it and look at it end on. So that was another aspect of the technology that was available to us. And now we see this bottom left image. Our anatomage tables have progressed since then, and you can now do the same thing. You can see this body has been, the image of the body has been sliced in a particular way to look down into the chest cavity and the thorax. And the same with this one up here, top left. You can swap things around now on the anatomage tables, so that you can look at one aspect of the body down here and a different aspect up there. So we are moving towards this same kind of technology, but we haven't yet achieved what we have here on the right, which is a simple beam of light coming down on the body that can be instructed by the user if they are trained to do so, and you can do all kinds of things with it, just with your mind, with your consciousness. So we're moving now in 2022, we're moving towards, we now have machinery that and technology that surgeons can use strapped to their head or brought down on a arm in front of them, where they can bring up the hologram of a person's heart or whatever to assist them in their operation. So we are moving ever closer. So now you can see this bridging technology taking place, where much of what I used on the craft was bridging towards what we now have. So were they testing experiencers to see how far they could stretch us, whether we could cope with this technology, whether our consciousness could match theirs in utilizing it? I think that is probably what they've been doing. And I believe sincerely, because I've seen evidence of it on the craft, that information has been leaked to scientists, put into their brains. It opens up, they've got all this information, they've got all these ideas, and they can come and produce this technology with the belief that it's all from their own mind. And we're not a stupid race of people. So yes, there's a heap of technology out there that we are capable of producing. But I think that in this way, we have had a helping hand from ET.